Will locks thin your hair? Are they going to mess up your scalp health? I had questions like these before I started my locks, as well as well into my locks journey. Welcome to Locs Life. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'm going to answer those questions and more. Probably the biggest concern I think people have when it comes to locks health and starting locks is if locks are going to make you lose your hair. The parts that you have in your hair when you first start locks, those of course are relatively permanent. Thus, the question is, are you going to have hair loss from where you parted your hair? That constant tension on those areas, is that going to cause hair loss? The answer to that is it doesn't have to. It can, but it doesn't have to. Without getting into anything more, all you need to do is take a look at a number of people with locks that have long, thick, healthy locks and take a look at their scalp, and you can see as well that there is not hair loss that's occurring. Thus, it is definitely very possible for you to have that in your own locks journey. The most important thing, I think, when it comes to preventing traction alopecia and hair loss for when you have locks is when it comes to retwisting your locks. Lock twisting can and does thin your hair, but it doesn't have to. So don't end your lock dreams just yet. There are 3 things that you need to keep in mind, and if you keep those things in mind, you will have a healthy locks journey for any natural aging or health issues that can occur that can impact your health and the health of your locks. So the 3 things to keep in mind are: 1, retwisting less frequently. Ideally, you should twist your hair no more than once every 2 months. This is helpful due to the pace of which your hair grows. The next thing to keep in mind is the retwisting method that you use. Interlocking instead of palm rolling can be really helpful for preventing stress on your hair and your scalp. The last one, probably the most important one as well, is the tension that you use when you're retwisting your hair. If when you are done retwisting, either yourself or your loctician, if you see like your scalp is super red in the parts, if you see puckering, if you have a headache, if it feels like very tight, if you start to see a lot of the white root bulbs kind of at the where your hair part is, aka that means like the hair was retwisted so tightly that your hair is being pulled from the root. That kind of action is what causes traction alopecia and what can cause hair loss and also just other health issues. Like I said, headaches. So you really want to be careful with the tension that you use when you're retwisting your hair. If you keep those 3 simple things in mind, it will go a long way for your scalp and hair health. Another problem that people may be wary of is neck and back pain. So locks can be heavier, or they tend to be heavier than loose natural hair, especially as your hair grows. You might be worried that it's going to cause neck pain or back pain, particularly when you shower too and you're washing your locks. As water goes into your hair and your hair soaks that water up, it's even heavier. So I think it's something that you probably don't necessarily need to worry about too much. I have relatively long locks and it hasn't been an issue for me personally, but I think that there are some things that you can do, especially if you're prone to having neck or back pain or headaches. So if you do tend to have those problems, there are a few things to keep in mind. Namely, one, you can kind of layer your hair. So if you still like the long locks look, if you layer your locks, that can help where you don't have as much actual volume going on, but you still have the length. And then, of course, sometimes you don't have a choice. You might want to cut your locks, so kind of keeping them maybe shoulder length or up to the point or whatever you were having pain, keeping your hair shorter than that. And then 2, when you're washing your locks, if you find that that is the point of which you tend to have problems, there are some things that you can do there. One, you can when you're washing your hair, you can kind of wash it in sections and kind of keep the section off to the side and sort of rest it on your shoulder that is not being washed. And then it's like, its own little weight there. And then the second thing that you can do is use a salon chair. So with that, if you use a salon chair and then you rest your head back, you're resting your locks essentially in the bowl. That is really helpful for keeping tension away from your scalp and your head. The last sort of locks fear or stigma that I think people have is that locks are dirty and you can never get them clean, and that you're going to have a lot of gross buildup or bacteria in your hair, and that it's inevitable. And what I have to say to that is completely untrue. Locks by their nature are not dirty and they're not unhealthy. You can have a healthy hair and scalp journey with locks. Where you tend to see issues is with people who don't know how to care for their locks, or people who do know, but like perhaps are just in a situation where they can't care for themselves and their hair. So that could be mental health issues or other things going on in their life that make it sort of impossible or really difficult for them to care for themselves and their hair. And I'll say, when you see a lot of those videos online where people have very heavy buildup in their locks and there's like a heavy duty clarifying routine needed, or that they end up cutting off their locks entirely, that of course does happen. But keep in mind, like, that can be the situation as I listed above, where people are in a situation where they weren't able to care for themselves and their locks got to that state. So one, be gentle if you do see that online. People are putting themselves out there and showing tips about how to clean their locks or their hair when it gets to that situation. But also keep in mind too, it's not inevitable for yourself. So you definitely can keep your locks healthy. And what I would recommend for that is honestly just a simple clarifying shampoo and avoiding heavy products that can lead to buildup in your hair. And then one other thing too, if you suffer from dandruff or psoriasis, things that might lend more to buildup in your scalp. So if you haven't started your locks journey, of course, try what you can do beforehand to get that under control. So that can be using different dandruff shampoos. Speak with your primary healthcare provider, see what options that there are. There might be something else going on that needs medical attention or medication for you to be able to manage your scalp health. But I still think even if you start your locks and your scalp isn't in the ideal position, you still can sort of get to that way. For me, when I started my locks, I had actually more dandruff than I do now now that I have locks. But all in all, like I said, it's definitely possible to have a healthy scalp and locks journey. So locks by their nature are not bad for you. Don't let other videos or preconceived notions stop you of having the locks that you've really envisioned for yourself. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks for stopping by. Again, this is Locs Life. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, everyone.